Good evening, Bhante. Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dharma. We are here again for another question and answer forum with Bhante. Today's topic is the Paṭicca-Samuppāda. This is by far one of the most important teachings of the Buddha, where if we are able to gain a proper and accurate understanding, it will help us tremendously in our cultivation and purification of mind. Last week, we covered some very important preliminary things leading to the state of avijja, because Paṭicca-Samuppāda begins with the condition of avijja. So last week, we covered how the Buddha meditated to the level of Sanya Vedayita Nirodha, where it was a complete stopping of the mind, stopping of all sensations and feelings. And in that state, what is known as the activity of the mind has stopped completely. And it is emerging from that state that the Buddha began to see how the Paṭicca-Samuppāda unfolded. And emerging from there, then the Buddha actually attained that level of Nirodha Samapatti. Okay, so Bhante, this evening we will start to cover the Paṭicca-Samuppāda. So perhaps I'll just, without further ado, I'll just leave Bhante to guide us into this teaching called the Paṭicca-Samuppāda. Bhante.
Well, I hope you remember what we discussed last time, that the Buddha stopped what is called the mind. Now what that means is, although normally people think that there are two things called mind and body, the Buddha has pointed out that there are no such two things called mind and body. We have only one thing, that is the body. There is no such thing as a mind separate from the body. What we call the mind is simply an activity of the body. This body is like a machine, and it is active. Like from the time the body is formed, it is going through an activity, and that activity is what we call life. If the activity stops, that body is dead. So, but there are many activities going on, not just one activity. One activity that we are normally aware of is breathing. Breathing is an activity that is going on. Even when we are sleeping, that activity goes on. If breathing stops, that means the body is dead. So you see, but that is not the only activity that is going on. The heart beating and the blood circulating, that is also an activity that is going on. When we eat, the food is digested, that is also an activity that is going on. Like that, there are so many activities going on in this body. But what we call the mind is really three activities that are going on in the body. Not all the activities. Three important activities, and the Buddha used three words to refer to those three activities. Now, first of all, we must understand that this body, there are five senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the entire body becomes a sense organ. So there are five senses. Now, apart from these five senses, there are other activities also going on. Now, first, these five senses are affected by things happening in the environment. That means this body is in an environment. The body, because it is a kind of machine, it is called, we don't call it a machine, we call it an organism. The body is called an organism. And this body as an organism is in an environment. What is outside is the environment. So the body is in the environment. And certain activities in the environment affects the body. So these activities outside in the environment affects, like light is an activity in the environment. And when light falls on the eye, we begin to see. That is a reaction of the eye to light. In the same way, a sound is an activity in the environment. And the sound will affect the ear, not the eye. Light affects the eye, sound affects the ear. And the ear reacts to that, and that is what we call hearing. In the same way, smell is another activity in the environment. So you see, when the activities go on in the environment, the senses react to these various activities. And that reaction of the senses is what we call perception. Eye perception is seeing. Seeing is called eye perception. Hearing is called ear perception. Smelling is called nose perception. Tasting is called tongue perception. Touch is called body perception. So perception is the reaction of the senses to environmental stimulation. The environment stimulates the senses. So it is important to understand how these things happen. The environment stimulates the senses and the senses react to the stimulus. So when the senses react to the stimulus, we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Now that activity is called perception. So that the Buddha used a word for that, and that is called vijnana, the word vijnana. Now it is important to understand that the normal translations of these words, which was originally done by Rice Davis. Rice Davis was a British person who became interested in the teachings of the Buddha, and he did a great deed by translating it into English. And not only translating, he even made a dictionary, a big dictionary, and to try to give the meaning of these words. But unfortunately, some of the things he didn't understand fully. So some of the translations were not exactly correct. You see, the difficulty was that the English language is a language which is very different from the Indian languages. So the important thing is that These words used by Rice Davids is not exactly conveying the meaning. So this is why I had to now, because I come from Sri Lanka, my language is very close to the Indian language. So because of that, it is easier for me to understand some of the words than for an Englishman to understand the meaning of certain words. Because some of the words are common to our language as well as the Indian languages like Sanskrit and Pali and the other languages. So this is why I am able to see that some words don't convey the meaning properly. So it's very important to understand this So I will be, in my explanation of Paṭicca-Samuppāda, I'll be using these things. So, changing the words, then it gives more meaning. So somehow, we have already discussed these things. So there are three words that the Buddha used: Vijnana, Mano and Chitta. Vijnana is perception, which is the activity of the five senses. But even modern scientists are aware that there are nerves going from the eye to the brain, ear to the brain, nose to the brain. And these nerves carry messages. So whatever is seen is carried to the brain. And the brain begins to think and give meaning to what was seen or what was heard, what was smelt, what was tasted, what was touched. So it's important to understand this. And when the brain gives meaning, that is not a percept anymore. It becomes a concept. If you know the difference between a percept and a concept, then you'll understand what I am saying. A concept is an idea which has a meaning. So, according to the meaning given to what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, an emotion is aroused in the form of liking something that we see, or hating something that we see, or fearing something that we see, or worrying about something that we see, that meaning leads to the emotional reaction. So this emotional reaction is what is called chitta. So there are three things: vijnana, mano and chitta. These are all activities of the body. These are not separate things. So activities of the body is what we call the mind. So mind is not something separate from the body. It is an activity of the body. Now, we don't have to go in too much into it because we have already discussed these things. So, last time we pointed out that the most important thing that the Buddha pointed out was that these emotions are blind. And these blind emotions are not able to think. Emotions cannot think. The thinking is done by what we called mano, that brain activity which we call thinking. That thinking is done by the brain activity which we call mano. And emotion cannot think. Emotion can only desire or hate or fear or worry. That is what emotion can do. Unfortunately, when we are born, the first thing that we are born with is the emotion. When a baby is born, you know the baby cries. That is an emotion. That baby cannot think. Only after some time, the baby begins to gradually learn to think. So the thinking comes later. And the thinking is dominated by the emotion. Our life is mainly carried away by emotions. But it is this ability to think which makes the human being different from other animals. The human being is different from the other animals mainly because of this ability to think. And it is because of this thinking that we have this thing called science today. All these electric lights, all these fans, all these air conditioning, all the vehicles, all these things come from the thinking part. But still, the thinking is become a slave to the emotions. It is the emotion that wants all these instruments, and the thinking part will just do what the emotions want. Today, you know that people are frightened that if there is a nuclear war, that will be the end of the world. Why did people make nuclear weapons? Because the emotions wanted. Emotions are dominating the minds of people, and so this is why we have all the problems like crime, wars, terrorism. All this is because emotions are dominating the world. So it is why the Buddha pointed out that what has to be done is the mind has to be dominated not by emotions but by the thinking part. The thinking part should dominate the lives of people. And the whole teaching of the Buddha is to develop the thinking part. And what the Buddha pointed out was that this thinking part has to be corrected. It is by correcting the thinking part that you see today there is a school of philosophy called existential philosophy, and they point out that out of all the animals in the world, the human being is the animal that is aware of his own existence. And not only aware of his own existence, he is also aware that he is going to die. So to exist or to be born is to die. The moment you are born, you are in the verge of dying. So our whole life is an effort to escape death. That is why we go in search of food, because to exist we have to have food. And today, all animals go in search of food, and while they are searching for food, another animal comes and makes that animal the food. So what happened? Even if you look at the human world, one human being is exploiting the other human being. That is how they keep on living. It's a competition. All this is ultimately every animal, every plant, every human being is struggling to survive, to exist, keep on existing. But in spite of this struggle, every person has to die. This is the problem of existence. And so, because we think we are existing, what we do is self-centered. We are selfish and self-centered, worrying only about myself. You think myself, I want this, I want that. And that is all that we are thinking of. And as long as we think in this way, we will be fighting and quarreling and struggling to exist. But in spite of this struggle, we are going to die. This is the problem of existence. And all religions are ultimately an effort to keep on living. Now, in ancient times, people thought that this world was governed by supernatural beings called gods and devils. And so, they started appealing to these supernatural beings, worshipping, praying, bribing in all ways to get help from the supernatural beings. But today, people have recognized that there is a law that everything that happens in the world happens only due to the presence of the necessary conditions. And that law means that the world is not governed by supernatural beings. And this is why today, when they get into trouble, they go after the scientists and not the gods and the supernatural beings. When you are sick, you don't go to the church, you go to the hospital. You see, this is because people are now having faith in human intelligence. They are not having faith in supernatural beings. And this is why today people are getting interested in the teachings of the Buddha, because Buddha brought this message to the world that everything happens due to the presence of the necessary conditions. And therefore, The world is not governed by gods and devils, but by this law. And that law is what is called the Paṭicca-Samuppāda. That Paṭicca-Samuppāda, if properly understood, all suffering can be brought to an end. That's what the Buddha pointed out. And how is that? He pointed out that although the existential philosophers thought that we exist, that existence is the most fundamental thing, the Buddha pointed out that existence is a delusion. That's the wrong concept. We do not really exist. Now that he understood by freeing the mind of emotions. It is the emotions that make us think that we exist. The emotions are not able to think, and the emotions desire things or hate things. It is only by getting rid of emotions and purifying the mind, freeing the mind of emotions, that the idea of existence will disappear. So he purified the mind, and that is how we talk about the jhanas. We said the jhanas are really levels of mental purity. There is the first level of mental purity, second level of mental purity, third level of mental purity, fourth level of mental purity. And then we go beyond the fourth level into infinity of space, infinity of perception, infinity of no existence, the infinity of neither perception nor neither sensation nor no sensation, and ultimately he stopped the process of sensation and perception. That means he stopped that activity called mind. And when that activity called mind is stopped, are you conscious? When that activity called mind has stopped, there is no consciousness. You are not aware of anything. Now from that state, again he woke up from that state. And when he woke up from that state, he began to understand how mind begins to work. So from a state of no mind, he started the first activity of the mind was what is called feeling and sensation. Feeling and sensation. Sensation means, to understand what sensation is, it is important to understand that we said we have eyes, and when light falls on the eye, we begin to see. What do we see? What we see is only light, because the eye can see the light only because this, what we call light, comes in the form of waves, and these waves come in different frequencies. So it's very difficult to explain this if you don't know the meaning of a frequency. So for that, if you know a little about science, you will begin to understand that the frequency means it is simply a kind of shaking. And so this, the light comes in different frequencies, and therefore you begin to see different colors. And this seeing color is what we see. And at the same time, we begin to see this color either as pleasant or it can be unpleasant. Some colors look beautiful, some colors look ugly. So that is what we call feeling. So the sensation is the color, and the feeling is whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. So that is the first thing that we see. But when we open our eyes, what we see doesn't look like seeing colors. We are able to see objects. How do we see objects? It is simply an object is constructed by putting the colors together. When a person draws a picture on the wall or in a paper, that person is only putting colors on the picture. And it is when we look at those colors that we see it in the form of a face, or in the form of a tree, or maybe in the form of a table or bottle or whatever, we are seeing objects by putting the colors together. It is a construct. So every object that we see is a construct, a mental construct. So we put the colors together and form a construct. And we not only form a construct, we identify it. We are able to look at a thing and say, oh, this is a face. How do I know that it is a face? Because I have seen faces before. So that object that we see is put into a category of objects that I have seen. That is called categorization. It is by categorization that we are able to identify an object. I can look at an object and say, that is a chair, or that is a clock, or that is a door. All that is because I am categorizing what I look at. So this identification means we are also giving a name to that. So every object has been given a name to identify that. When we say clock, that is a name given to that object. When we say table, we are giving a name to that object. So there is an image and a name. Now this is what we call nama and rupa. Rupa means the image and nama means the name. So these are the words that we use. Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. That Vijnana word is perception. But perception means identifying the object. That is the meaning of perception. We are not only seeing things, we are also able to identify and say, this is such and such. That is the meaning of perception. So we are making use of these things. So it is very important to understand that now I use these words that I am just using, but these are not the words used by Rice Davids, who translated these things. They use the word Vedana and Sanya are called feeling and perception. I am using the word feeling and sensation. Sensation is not the same thing as perception. So you see, and then that word sankhara, they translate as some other words.
Volition.
Huh?
Volition.
Volition. Now that word volition has a different meaning. Now I call it a construct. Construct gives the meaning that it has been constructed by putting the colors together. That's the mental construct. The word sankhara means construct. So only when you put the proper words that you get the meaning out of it. And so once you have constructed and you are then identifying it, and that identification is really the perception. You are able to say this is such and such. That is the perception. So once we have perceived, what we have perceived is simply an object which comes in the form of an image and a name for it. An image and a name for it. Then, once that image has been made and the name, we say Vijnana Paccaya Nama Rupam. Nama means the name, Rupa means that mental image. Then we talk about Nama Rupa Paccaya Salayatana. Now, Salayatana means we are not only looking with our eyes, we are also hearing with our ears and smelling with our nose. We are also tasting with our tongue, and we are also touching with our body. This is why you give something to a small child, that child will want to put it in the mouth and touch in various ways, get all the impressions. So that is why all those things are put together to form an object. So it is not only the eye that we are using. When I look at this bottle here, I see it as a bottle, but I know that if I touch the bottle, this is how I'll feel it. Even if I have never touched it, I still know when I touch it, I'll feel it like this. That is because I am using my memory. I have touched bottles before. So you see, because we have using all the five senses, we put together all that to form an object. That forming an object is what is called phassa. Salayatana paccaya phasso. Phassa means the formation of an object. Today the word phassa is translated as contact. Phassa is not contact. Phassa is the formation of an object. The object is formed by making use of all the five senses, not just one sense. So that complete object is formed. That is passa. Once the object is formed, we are going to make use of the feeling in the object. You may get a pleasant feeling in the object, or you may get an unpleasant feeling in the object. And the moment you get the feeling, you react to that object with a desire or hatred. You see, it's an emotional reaction to the object. That emotional reaction the Buddha called tanha. Tanha is not craving. Today, Rice Davids use the word craving. But tanha is not craving. Tanha is the emotional reaction. A craving is wanting something. But here we not only wanting, if we dislike something, we don't want it. We want to get rid of it. So therefore it is not a craving. It is the emotional reaction. Now the moment the emotional reaction occurs, another interesting thing happens. You see, we first formed an object out there. Once the object is there, you begin to react to that object emotionally. Then there are two things, the object and the reaction. Earlier there was no reaction, but now there is a reaction. The moment the reaction comes up, the object is out there, the reaction is inside here. And what is inside? What do we do to what is inside? We say, this reaction is mine, is my reaction. The moment we say this reaction is mine, that is called personalizing the reaction. That is the meaning of the word upadana. Rice Davids used the word grasping or clinging. This is not grasping or clinging, it is calling that mine. That means personalizing. So the moment it is personalized, what happens? How can there be something mine if there is no I? The moment you say this is mine, you have created the I. I comes into being. I coming into being is called bhava. The word bhava means coming into existence. The I have come into existence. Earlier there was no I here. There was only an object. The moment a desire or a hatred came, mind came, and with the mind came the I. You understood? So the I comes into being by personalizing. So the moment the I has come into being, another question arises. What did you call the I? Where is the I? The I is only just a concept, but what are you referring to as I? There must be an object to call the I, to refer to the I. What is the object? The I has to exist. How can the I exist? What is the meaning of existence? Existence has to be understood. Existence means, now if you say this cup exists, what does it mean? The cup occupies space, it occupies time. To exist is to occupy space and time. So what is the I that is occupying space and time? The only I that can be occupying space and time is the body. So the body becomes the I. Body is the thing that is occupying space and time. When the body begins to occupy space and time, you can say the body is so many inches tall, so many fat, and all kinds of things you can talk about the body, you see. That is occupying space. The volume of the body, length, breadth and height. So, but occupying time means it has a past, a present and future. To occupy time is to have a past, a present and a future. Now the I is not only just I, but the I has been identified as the body. The body has become the I. So the body has become the self. The body has become the self. So once the body has become the self, it has a past, present and future. What is the past of the body? Birth. birth is the past of the body. What is the future of the body? Death. Death is the future of the body. And in between birth and death is what we call aging. So you see, now you are not only having a body, you are not only having a self, you are also having birth, old age and death. With the coming of birth, old age and death, what happens? Grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow and despair. By creating a self, you have created suffering. The whole problem is this getting hold of the body. Now the self has become the body. So you have created the self, and with the self has come suffering. You understood? That is how the Buddha says, this is how this whole mass of suffering has come into being. Eva metasya kevalasya dukkha khandasya samudayo hoti. So the Paṭicca-Samuppāda is an explanation of how suffering comes to an end, how suffering comes into being. But what the Buddha pointed out was, if we can see this properly, we begin to understand this whole thing has been created by this mental process. Not only the self, the world is also created by this mental process. The whole world and the self and the suffering was created by this mental process. And by understanding this fully, by reflecting on this, ultimately the thought of world and the self and the I, everything disappears. When you have fully understood this. So, becoming aware of that brings about what is called a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift, a different way of thinking. And the different way of thinking is to realize that this is all a mental creation, not a fact. So the existential philosophers thought we are existing, but actually existence is a delusion. That is, when we have understood properly, we awaken from the dream of existence. And that is what is called Nirodha Samapatti. Now some people who write books on Buddhism, they also think the Nirodha Samapatti is the stopping of the mind. Huh?
That's right. They say it's the same as the Sanya Vedayita Nirodha.
Yeah.
Basically, almost all the references I come across regarding these two terms, they say they are the same.
Now, I have brought here a sutra which we have to make very important.
Which sutra is that, Bhante? Is it in one of the Nikayas?
Yeah, this is the Nikaya, the
I have the Nikayas.
gradual sayings for volume 5.
Which Nikaya is that one?
Anguttara Nikaya.
Okay, I can show it on the screen if you want, Bhante.
Uh-huh.
I have the Nikayas on the screen in my computer.
Anguttara
I can show it in the
Nikaya.
screen. Okay. Book of what?
Huh?
Which book? Book of?
Book 5.
Book of 5. And which sutra number?
This is sutra number 6.
Number 6, entering.
It's called concentration.
It says entering here.
Huh?
Concentration. Book of Tense. The Book of Tense, Bhante.
Yeah, the book of Tense. Yeah.
Book of Tense.
Book of Tense, yeah.
Sutra number 6, concentration.
You got it?
Yeah, 133. Okay, we'll come to that. Here, yeah. So,
What does it say?
this one, Bhante.
Yeah. Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One. That's one. You try to make it big so that we can read.
As big as I can make it down. I think people can see it.
Yeah. Paid homage to him, sat down at one side and said to him, Bhante, could the bhikkhu obtain such a state of concentration? Now, concentration there means samadhi. Yeah?
Samadhi, yes.
Yeah. He would not be percipient of earth in relation to earth, water in relation to water, fire in relation to fire, air in relation to air, of the base of infinity of space in relation to the infinity of space. That is the samadhi, yeah?
Yes.
And the infinity of consciousness, the infinity of nothingness and the infinity of neither perception nor non-perception of this world in relation to this world, relation to the other world in relation, but he could still be percipient.
What does percipient mean, Bhante?
Still conscious.
Still conscious, able to perceive.
Able to perceive. Then the Buddha said, the important thing is to be free of all those experiences, but at the same time you're conscious. And so the Buddha says, he could Ananda, but how, Bhante, could he obtain such a state of consciousness? Here Ananda Bhikkhu is percipient. This is peaceful, this is sublime.
I'm sorry. Whoops.
That is what is called the Nirodha Samapatti. So that Nirodha Samapatti, this is just to show that Nirodha Samapatti is not the cessation of sensation and perception.
Okay, here. So this sutra is explaining the state of Nirodha Samapatti.
Yeah. That is to point out that Nirodha Samapatti is a state where you are fully
Still
conscious.
Percipient.
Percipient.
That's right. So it's strange that everybody else seems to be talking about Nirodha Samapatti as a state where you have no sensation and feeling anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I specially chose this sutra to point out that.
Yeah, that is very helpful, Bhante.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the next sutra, this Ananda,
he said
he goes to Sariputta and asks the same question.
Here.
And he answers the same way.
And he gets the same answer.
Yeah.
Because at that time, Ananda, during the life of the Buddha, Ananda was not yet enlightened. He was still a learning monk.
Yeah.
Is there anything else Bhante would like to enlighten us?
Well, that is the most important thing.
Okay.
And so now you can ask questions.
Yes, it's open to the floor for questions. The microphone is there, so please approach the microphone. I think Bhante has given us a very good explanation of the Paṭicca-Samuppāda. Are there any questions from the floor? Don't wait until we end the session, then you say you have a question, which is what has happened before. Either you all fully understand, or you're all totally confused. I see. Okay. So the next person with a question, please get ready.
Bhante, just now you explained this passa is a formation of a object. So can I say this passa actually is where the conceptual idea and meaning is coming up from there?
Huh?
No, just now you mentioned passa is this formation of an object. So can I say that at this stage actually is where the conceptual ideas and meaning coming up from there?
Passa, I said, is becoming aware of an object here. So what is the question?
No, what I mean is just now you mentioned is a formation of an object at this stage. So I just wondering, is our conceptual ideas and meaning given to an object is also coming at this stage?
It says salayatana pacha patso, and salayatana means using all the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue. It's not only just one sense. All the senses are being used, and by making use of all the senses, you are becoming aware of an object. Yeah.
Bhante, back to this question that you just answered, Pasa. In this case, it is not just the object, but the object with reference to the world, because you have now put together all the five senses, the perceptions from all the five senses.
Object, yeah.
So it's now not just the object,
but the objects in the world are included.
With reference to the world. So now the world, the concept of the world arises.
Yeah. The objective world. World as an object, because after that comes the subject, which is the yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here it says number 6, Pasa is cognition, becoming conscious of the environment. So in this case, the environment is really the world.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's collectively all your senses have told you there is the whole world out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the objective experience.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it was translated as contact, so that created a lot of confusion. What is making contact with what?
Yeah. No, that idea of contact came because even the monks were going wrong there.
Yeah.
Because there is a word pottab.
Pottab, yes.
The touch. Pottab refers to the tangibles. That means what can be touched with your body. The sense of touch. So with the sense of touch, you can touch anything. So what you can touch is the tangible. So that is the pottab.
So the diagram up there, Bhante. In the diagram up there.
They are the tangibles.
This one.
Stimulating touch receptors.
So pottab is because of kaya.
Yeah, kaya.
Came from kaya.
Right, yeah.
Tangible, stimulating, touch, producing.
And they were making a mistake that tangible is pottab.
Yeah.
That, no.
Pasa. Tangible is pasa. That's why there's the contact, because the hand comes into contact with the object.
That's right,
But actually, pasa is really the conception. Putting together all these different perceptions together.
That's right,
creating the concept of a world out there.
That's right, yeah.
So potaba is really the mental image of touches. Potaba is mental images of touches. What your mind has now realized you have touched something. All right. So this is the Salayatana. Any other question from the floor regarding the Paticca-Samuppāda, what has been discussed?
I think you have to go home and think more about it.
Yeah. So, and we have an opportunity for one more Q&A forum. Sister, you have one. Good.
Yeah?
Bhante, the Salayatana, it includes the mind, isn't it? 6 senses.
Huh?
Salayatana.
Salayatana.
Salayatana includes the mind. So, therefore, it's 6 senses. 6 senses. Am I right?
You're right. There's 6 senses up there.
Say it again. What exactly are you trying to say?
Salayatana includes the mind. That means...
Yeah. Mano is also included. Yes, Salayatana. All 6, all put together is how you make the identification of the object. So Salayatana Pacha Passo. So the Passa comes after the Salayatana.
Yeah.
Putting all the senses together.
So it's the mano that collectively, with all these perceptions, the mano refers to the past to try to interpret the meaning and to give meaning to it.
Yeah.
And this conception of the world is pasa.
The objective world.
Yeah, the objective world. Okay. So, any other question from the floor?
One last question.
Good. No last question. There are more questions to come.
Okay, Bhante. Just now you explained that these are our mind are actually activities for the body. Okay. So by looking at this Paticca-Samuppāda, it seems like the mind comes first before the body. So I'm a bit confused about that. Because without the mind, I don't think the
mind comes before the body.
Yes. By referring to this Paticca-Samuppāda, it seems like the mind comes first.
The body is being created by the mind.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, this is also an interesting thing. It is I told you there is no different thing called a mind and a body. It is the body itself that is creating the mind. And it is the mind that makes us aware of the body. That is the interesting thing. The body makes the mind and the mind makes the body.
Yeah.
Bhante, there is such explanation in Buddhism, cause and effect. But can this Paticca-Samuppāda also cause and effect, mind and body? I mean, the body, the mind causing the mind.
This use of those two words, cause and effect, is not correct.
Okay.
To say, to use the word cause means you are speaking about one cause creating another effect. There is no such thing. Many conditions are necessary for something to happen. So it's not a cause.
So there is no such explanation, cause and effect.
Yeah. Even to talk about cause and effect is a mistake.
But there is
no
some
such thing
explanation
as
in the sutta. Some explanation in the suttas.
These are not in the sutras, these are translations of people.
Okay.
They are not in the sutras.
I think what Bhante means is conditions give rise to outcomes.
Yeah.
not cause and effect.
Yeah.
Conditions and outcomes.
The Buddha used the word hetu. Hetu means condition, not cause.
Any other questions? I think, sister, is that question answered, that it is really conditions giving rise to outcomes? That is what Bhante is translating it as, not cause and effect. Because the word cause means this thing can only be produced by one cause. But that is not what happens in this world. Any other question, please?